Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the HEA Designs Chief Pocket Knife. First off though, in the name of full disclosure, I gotta let you know this guy was sent to me by HEA Designs. He said, hey Nick, I got a new model coming out. I know you took a look at the Hunter. I think you might like this one even more. I said, oh great, sounds like fun, but I told him as always, I'm gonna talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Sent him the disclaimer on my website. Told him it might be a gem, might be junk. He did still send it along. Nonetheless, we do have to assume this is the very best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and I'm doing my very best not to let that affect the nature or the quality of my review. Next thing, let's do some size comparison real quick. We'll put it up here next to, of course, the Spyderco Delica. So we're going to see here, this is not a particularly large knife. In terms of sharpened blade length, we're a little bit longer than the Delica. In terms of overall blade length, just slightly shorter. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2. And so again, we're in relatively small knife territory here, but slightly smaller handle, slightly shorter blade. And then finally, here it is against the Spyderco PM2, which at the moment is wearing a fancy set of scales from RG Custom Machine Works. Anyways, but this guy is markedly larger than the HEA Chief, and so, yeah, do keep that in mind. So there is that. Next thing, this is a follow-up design in some ways, although I gotta be honest with you, it kind of doesn't feel that way. HEA Designs originally released the Hunter. Now, I have a full video up about the Hunter. You're welcome to check it out, but it was kind of wild, right? It was a design that was very, very much out there, and it had some of the core, like if you look at the lines, you're like, oh yeah, I see what you, I got it. But this really feels like a very different beast than the Hunter. In the pocket, it has been an entirely different beast. So this is a follow-up, but it is not exactly a follow-up in the classical sense. It's not the Hunter 2.0, it's kind of its own affair. And then finally, one note, this is the titanium version. There is also a carbon fiber version. Actually, it is the same price on the website as the titanium version. Both of them are $239. So let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting knife right here. So on the good side, to start with, both of these, both configurations, the carbon fiber and the titanium, are still available at the time of shipping. I'm sorry, at the time of filming. Hopefully they're available at the time of shipping, or else you're going to have a bad time. But anyways, this is a very nice thing, right? HEA Designs has often been very kind of burst sales, and I'm very glad to see them having this guy stick around. And I really hope that this particular model becomes an evergreen item for them. That is, they continue selling it over and alongside the new hotness that they decide to implement. But I really do hope this sticks around for a long time, because it is quite a nice thing, and I really appreciate that availability. Oftentimes, it has been a problem for HEA. Next thing, ergonomically speaking, this is pretty good, right? It works well in the hand. If you choke up right here, it feels pretty solid. It's nice and wide. It's got a little bit of rounding on the handles here, which is actually a nice thing, right? It doesn't look that way at first blush. You look at it like, oh, flat frame lock, but no, this is actually rounded, which is nice. It's got a very nice stone wash on it, which gives it plenty of gription, but not too much, and you can choke back a little bit if you'd like, and that's comfortable too. But overall, ergonomically speaking, this is pretty solid, right? I think the ergos are good. The clip is a little bit, you can kind of feel the clip in there, but it's not like a really bad hot spot. It's just something that you're feeling in there. So overall, nice in the hand. Next thing, this is actually a versatile knife in terms of opening, right? One way to open it is the front flip, like I just did right there. If you have longer fingers, you can probably manage the index finger front flip without choking your hand up in a weird way there. And if you are a flicker type of person, you can very easily do it that way. And in practice, carrying this knife, and I have ended up carrying this knife probably a lot more than I really expected to, partly because I've been ridiculously busy, so the same stuff has been on my table for review for a little while, and partly because this is a real nice knife just to throw in the pocket, right? But I found that most of the time, I've been flipping back and forth, pardoning the phrasing, between the front flip and between the flick out here, and both of them work pretty much equivalently. So I am pretty impressed with that. Next thing, blade on this guy. So the steel on this guy is S35VN. I don't believe it's labeled on there, but maybe it is in a place I'm not seeing it. It's a very, very sterile sort of knife, but S35VN is a steel that, although it's certainly what's kind of shocking to me is that here in 2022, S35VN feels like, oh, well, that's a little toward the back of the back. But that was an absolute super steel 5 years ago. So you know what? I still like it. It's a solid steel. It's very easy to maintain, etc. And it comes to a very nice, as it was done here, it was done well. Comes to a very nice thin edge here. It's got a sharpening choil on there. It's a really nice little blade. It cuts well. It sharpens well. It strops up nicely. One of my favorite parts of S35, honestly, is the stroppability durability. It is an absolutely solid blade. This is a good cutting tool. And then next on the good side, it has some very nice details to it, right? This is a knife, Sam over at HEA Design is a very nice designer. I really appreciate his work a lot, and it's because he puts a lot of thought into it, right? But you get things like, for instance, the clip here is not on the clip is not on the detent bar. Well, I mean, yes, kind of. Lock bar is the thing I was looking for, which means that as you are grabbing this guy to front flip it, if your fingers are resting on the clip, it's not actually increasing the strength of the detent, which is a nice little detail there. One other thing that's worth noting is that the lock bar relief, these little cutouts to make sure that the titanium has enough flex here, is internal rather than external, so this carries very, very smoothly. It also has a nice rounded titanium body, so it feels very round, it feels very smooth in the pocket, and just more generally speaking. It has a lock bar insert as well as an over travel stop, which you can kind of see. Yeah, you can see it right in there, which prevents the lock bar from going too far this direction, getting sprung, which is a good thing. It has a milled clip, which I think is very well tuned for carry. This clip works well, and it's designed well to fit well in the pocket and to hold this guy effectively. It has a very nice action to it, the edges on it are all just beautifully finished. Even the inside of the titanium here is nicely chamfered. Can't really argue with that. This is overall, it's full of really nice details, and it's very clear that Sam was thinking very carefully as he designed this. It's also very clear that it's an iterative piece, right? That he's learned things from a lot of prior knives and ended up with something that is quite nice. Spoiler alert, I really like this knife. But anyways, so there's that. And finally, on the good side, this to me has a very strong feeling of simple thing done well. In practice, this knife is not particularly complex. It's not particularly off the beaten path. Front flippers are pretty dime a dozen these days. The knives on bearings are not uncommon, but it just feels like every little detail here, by and large, has been well buttoned up, right? It's been pretty damn well done overall, and it's a relatively simple thing, right? It's a titanium frame lock, S35 VN and whatnot, but it's just done well. It's really, really nicely done. And so it has that feeling of this isn't trying to do all that crazy much, but the things that it's trying to do are very nice. So to me, all of that is the good, is that it feels like a simple thing done well, has good details, a great blade, versatile opening methods, reasonable ergos, and it is still available at the time of filming. I really do hope that persists. On the great side, this is an intensely carryable knife. And I mean that in a couple of ways. I mean, to start with, if we go ahead and we measure the blade here, we're going to see this guy comes in uncontroversially under 3 inches, which is going to make this legal in a lot of places where larger blades might not be legal. So that's a nice thing kind of in and of itself. But it is also just really easy in the pocket too, right? If you put this guy up next to, for instance, the Spyderco Delica, you find that this is actually smaller than the Delica on a lot of dimensions, yet it still packs about the same amount of blade, usable blade in there, right? That's very nice. The smoothness of the exterior overall, with really nothing to snag on. No, the lock bar, internal lock bar relief is actually a very nice thing for pocketing this guy too. It's got no flipper tab sitting out there pecking on whatever's in your pocket. I mean, it's a vertical pecker, but we're not going there. I'm never saying those words again. And, it's got a nice deep carry clip, such that it's, okay, maybe it's not a deep carry clip, but it is still a relatively deep carry. Only this much of this knife is sticking up, and because it has the screw holes there, as well as on the other side, it's very easy to pinch and remove. This ended up being a knife that was really easy for me to look at my review table and go, yeah, that one, right? As I'm, carrying things that I need to get ready to review, this was really good for that. This was an excellent knife for daily carry. And as a result, this snuck into my pocket, and it has continued to sneak into my pocket a lot more than I probably expected it to. So on the great side, to me, it's a solid tool. It's a simple thing, but it carries really ridiculously well. And as a result, it's just been a joy to use. So to me, that's what's great, is it's just a really, really carryable knife. The bad side, the detent feels like it started a little bit soft. Now, I'm going to say, I don't know whether the detent changed, like something wore in, or whether I changed. I'm not sure. This is a subjective experience sort of thing. But I'm going to say it feels fine to me now. Either I adjusted or something changed. Maybe there was some gunktion inside the detent ball hole that was kind of keeping it. I don't know. But either way, it is not a particularly hard detent. but it is fine. So I'll just kind of throw that in there as a maybe that's going to be a thing for you. And if you're a really hard detent person, this is probably not going to suit you that well. But at the same time, the detent is now roughly fine. And either I've gotten used to it or it's gotten a little better. Either way, next thing, the sharpening choil on this guy is very nice, but it needs to be just a little tiny hair longer, right? You see right at the bottom here, there's this tiny little smile. If we had 1 millimeter more sharpening choil, this would be a complete non-issue, but it just needs a little tiny bit more there. Next thing, maybe it's a little bit on the heavier side. Here, I'll throw it, and I say that ridiculously, right? I'm used to ultra-light modern pocket knives. This guy is coming in at 3.15 ounces for just under 3 inches of blade, but it does feel a little bit heavier than some of the ultralight stuff. And the other thing is that the balance is a little bit further back than you might maybe expect. Not the end of the world, though. But nonetheless, if they did a little bit of internal milling here, particularly on this scale, maybe they could cut that weight down a little bit, get that balance just a little more forward. Not a big deal, but it's just a thing for future runs. Next thing, the price on this guy is $239. It is not a bad price, and for this particular knife, I think it's done pretty well, right? But if you look at the competition, it's a little bit on the pricier side. HEA is a small brand, and if you put that up against large brands like Concept or something like that, where you can get S35 VN and titanium for $170, $180, yeah, this isn't exactly a world-beating value. I will say I like this design a lot, and I think it is worth paying for good design. But nonetheless, you can definitely get a little bit more knife for less from elsewhere. Then finally, on the bad side, the only thing that I think is genuinely bad here is this is a very lazy lanyard hole. This is just one of those things where you take a very nice knife design and then just like, and you drill through a freaking hole. And it's like, really, Sam? Why you gotta do this to us, right? I mean, he could have put like a little post in there for a lanyard to go around. He could have just eschewed the whole damn thing. I don't know. This just strikes me as like, if you hold the knife like this, it's prettier. I'm just gonna say it that way, right? Like, seriously. This is a prettier knife right now. Am I wrong? No, I'm not. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. That's subjective. But maybe I'm wrong about it being... anyways, who knows? Either way, it's a lazy lanyard hole. And it's also a little bit below the clip, which is the other thing to remember. So if you are carrying this with a lanyard, your clip is going to ride a little bit higher because you got the lanyard coming through it. So again, this didn't have to be a thing. Just like, no, you don't need a lanyard hole in a knife. I'm sorry. You flat out don't. You can do it. It's a feature, but it's not a requirement. So if there's not a good way to do it, don't do it. Anyways, I digress. That's bias. But to me, all of that is the bad. It's a lazy lanyard hole. $239 is not the best price ever, but you know what? It's fine. It's a good design and such. Maybe a little bit of internal milling could make the balance a little bit more toward the front. Sharpening choil needs a little tiny bit more, and the detent started a little soft, and maybe I did. Well, I'm always a little bit soft, at least according to commenters. But nonetheless, that's a thing. On the ugly front, there is one ugly thing, and it's not actually about this knife. It's about HEA's general policies, and that is that they are very opaque in their sourcing. I am still very frustrated, especially in 2022, when the supply chain is more disrupted than ever, when companies are very opaque about their sourcing, right? If you look on their website about where this knife is from, they say, currently we have partners in the US, Asia, and Europe assisting to bring these creations to life. Many of our countries touch multiple countries and many of our projects touch multiple countries and facilities. Now, I totally get wanting to keep your manufacturer secret, to keep competitors away and better hide your margins, but as a consumer, no, I don't like this, right? And there are many reasons to not do this. People want to support the home team, right? And if this were made in the States, some people would be much more interested in that price. I don't think it's made in the States at that price, but maybe, who knows? But other people want to avoid purchasing from specific countries for sociopolitical reasons. Others want to know the factory is a proxy for quality, right? In this case, the quality is good to go, right? I have it in my hand, like, yeah, whoever made this did a good job, but it's still very nice to know, oh yeah, this is made by the same factory that made these other brands, and that they do really good work. But regardless, it's really ugly to me that HEA actively prevents people from learning this valuable information. And unfortunately, what it means for a lot of people is that you should assume the worst, whatever the worst happens to be from you. Like if you had a really bad experience in the Faroe Islands, then maybe this knife was made in the Faroe Islands. You don't know, so you just have to assume, right? But anyways, all I'm saying is that unfortunately, because they are opaque about it, it's kind of, everybody has to assume the worst, and that's not a great thing. So, and by the way, quality is about effort, not geography. There are great makers in many different places, and the quality here is good, wherever the heck it was made. I just wish I knew where that whatever the heck was. But I'm hoping that HEA will realize sooner or later that this is kind of an ugly practice and just be open about their manufacturing partners, right? Maybe it touches multiple countries, then cool. Tell me that, right? Oh, the blade is ground in Italy, and the handle is ground in the Faroe Islands. Machined in the Faroe Islands. And you know what? The lanyard hole is drilled in Kazakhstan, right? I don't freaking know. Just tell us that. And that way the knife's got a better story. But so the quality is great here. There's nothing to hide. So just be transparent. Please, HEA. I've been ringing this bell for years, but it just frustrates me. And especially, this is one of the few companies that is completely like, no, I'm not telling. And it's just it's tedious, guys. Just tell us. You're right, the work is good. Tell us how you did it. Anyways, so to me, that's very ugly. I'd like to see transparency in their sourcing rather than sort of a whole lot of none. But on the final conclusion front, with that aside, honestly, this is just good. This is a really nice knife because it's got a reasonable availability. It's got fine ergonomics, versatile opening, a great blade, good details, a simple design that's done well, and really good carryability, like intense carryability. Sure, the tent started a bit soft. The choil definitely needs to grow a little bit. A little internal milling wouldn't hurt. The price, it could be a little better relative to the competition. The lanyard hole is 100% lazy, and I really wish that they were willing to give clear details about their product sourcing. But this is my very favorite HEA design knife by a mile, and that's partly because in many ways, this feels like a very function-forward knife, whereas some of their other stuff has been very much design pieces, right? The knife that preceded this, the Hunter, was an absolutely wild batarang of an affair, right? It was cool, it worked. Fine pocket knife, but yeah, it was a little much, right? This feels like, HEA took a look at that and went, cool idea. Let's make a version that I can hand to a non-knife person with a straight face, right? And I'm not mocking the HEA. I really like a lot of the design work, right? I think it's really cool, and I think he does a lot of really interesting artistic things. I see some of that artistic vision right here, too. But this just feels a little bit more daily, it feels more like a daily carry knife, right? I love the wild style, and I really hope Sam doesn't stop being his unique self, but I would love to see this be an option that they are always selling, or at least restocking regularly. Keep doing the wild designs, keep doing the flame, keep doing the Hunter, keep doing all of the other weird stuff that HEA does, but then at the same time, keep something like this around to be making constant money with a good, solid design that works for a lot of people, right? I can think of plenty of people in my life I could give this knife to and they would be incredibly happy with it. I can think of slightly fewer where I could hand them a Hunter and they wouldn't be like, "This is a batarang." Like that would be a slightly different thing. So anyways, this is a damn good tool, and it's a nice carryable knife for days when you don't want something so wild. But more importantly, like I said, this is a knife that just kind of kept sneaking into my pocket. This was just like, oh yeah, need a knife? I'll grab that one. Right? It's for review, right? That always makes it a little bit easier. And it carries well, it cuts well, it does a great job, and it rides in the pocket with absolutely no problem. And as a result of all of that, I think that this is a gem, because it's doing something simple very well, it carries great, it has that taste of fun design, it's still an HEA, but it's mostly just a damn good knife. And although there are lots of great knives in this price range, you could even get a little more for a little less from other brands. This is really good. And if you like the knife and you like the style, you're going to love carrying it, and spending the money will not be chief among your concerns. Okay, anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, that my review batter rang a bell for you, that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.